Yoav, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So look, just looking kind of through the profile of Walnut, I mean, you started right after the pandemic started in August 2020, if I'm not mistaken. And then about a year later, like mid 2021, you'd raised a $15 million Series A, which is spectacularly fast. I think like most founders dream of kind of getting from 0 to 1 that quickly. And that's really what I want to do here is just dive in as deep as possible. We're all about 0 to 1 here. Welcome to the Product Market Fit Show, brought to you by Mistral, a seed stage firm based in Canada. I'm Pablo. I'm a founder turned VC. My goal is to help early stage founders like you find product market fit. So I want to dive into kind of right as you started and then everything that you did until you really kind of had product market fit. And so maybe with that said, I know before Walnut, you had another startup, I think it was called Ranky. Maybe we can start there. If you could just tell us a little bit about what that was about and then kind of what happened in the years between that and Walnut.
First of all, it was a Series B, not a Series A, but, who remembers, right? It's been a while. So I had a couple of companies in the past. One of them was one of the first companies globally to help startups with like anything growth, anything marketing, anything, go to market. And it was a long time ago. Started off in Tel Aviv, but grew to places like London and New York and other locations, where most of the startups that raised a seed round ended up using our services for doing something with their initial funding and helping them go 0 to 1. Some of them are unicorn companies today, and we were like the first team that helped them scale. That was probably 12 or 13 years ago. And then I was also building a startup right before this one that was using AI, and that was before it was cool. It was around 2017. But it was building out AI models for trying to help spot the bad guys online, people that are stalking children, people that are bullying kids, people that are trying to meet kids via all kinds of social networks. So we had a pretty sophisticated data science ability to do that. We raised about a 15 million seed round. It was, and all in all, it was a great experience. And with all that, I have to say, Walnut was the fastest company I've built to date.
And so what kind of, maybe just walk us through kind of the origin story of Walnut. I mean, people have been doing demos for like as long as I can remember. And so for you to try and let's say crack that market with something that's quite different, like where does that idea even come from?
So what's cool about this idea is, if it wasn't me, it would have come to anyone, right? You try to show a product when you work for a B2B company, everything breaks. There's always a problem to customize the experience, and the buyers end up getting kind of screwed with a really, really generic sales experience, and they end up not wanting to buy. So, and you mentioned the waitlist, right, in the call we had before the recording. It's just interviewing our target audience and grew a waitlist of VP of sales that wanted to let their salespeople own demos, create their own demos, not needing to talk to anyone from R&D, product or design to create sales demos. And then we just interviewed, VP of sales, CROs from global companies. The response was insane. And they started pile up in a waiting list. And only then I felt comfortable enough to go out and raise the seed round.
Where did the idea even come from in the first place? Like, was this a frustration that you had personally with demos, or was it more like a market analysis thing? Like, how did you even get there to even start doing, let's say, customer discovery?
Personally for me, the first time that I encountered how crappy sales demo was when I had that marketing company I just told you about, where I saw tech startups spending millions just to get all kinds of users to schedule a demo or to see what it's about or try and win them over the competition. And then whenever they tried showing them the product, something ended up breaking. And it was a really long time ago, just carried that thought. My co-founder was a tech leader kind of on the side of that was selling software to enterprise companies, or on the side of enterprise companies buying software from small startups, and every demo that he has experienced has been completely broken. And we just took that thought in mind. We interviewed the proper, target audience. And honestly, when you just start telling a VP of sales or a chief revenue officer, your salespeople will not have to rely on anyone from the back end. It was just kind of a shut up and take my money type of moment. And we built a very unappealing MVP where you could just take one screen off your entire SaaS platform, customize it in a drag and drop way, a little bit like a Wix editor. Just kind of customize data, and it's of course not connected to your backend anymore. So it's not going to break or it's not going to freeze even if you have a major demo in an hour. So that was kind of the MVP also that we built out.
Is that the main value prop at the beginning, was just something that you could rely on? Or was it, because, today you have different value props around the number of demos that you can do, like the speed of getting a demo done and where you can maybe embed demos and these sort of things. What was the original kind of the main value prop really at the beginning?
So it was actually twofold. And I know most of the online material would say you need to have one when you're at MVP, but we had two value props for the same MVP. One of them was it's not connected to your backend anymore. It's not going to crash, which happens a lot during demos. But the second thing is you can drag and drop your way into something customizable that contains your client's data. And we still didn't raise money at that point. I think it was still pre-seed. So we didn't spend a lot of time to build out a sophisticated MVP that can carry a lot of value props. It was just all kind of derived from the same feature.
And how did you go about, maybe just walk me through the customer interview process? Because that, I always find that's really important. Like, how many of those did you do? And how did you go about getting people to even give you the time when you didn't, even really have a product ready to sell?
I think what played out for our benefit was timing. So it was like the first or second lockdown of COVID worldwide, and salespeople had to adjust to a new reality where they cannot fly out and meet someone face to face. And then, if you just have to open your laptop and show a demo, even if it breaks, like you're gonna make a joke or talk about the weather, and there's all kind of ways to go around that. If everything went remote in the same day globally, then you have to have a new set of tools and products to kind of help you, walk through it. So there were a lot of challenges for sales leaders in 2020. This was a major one: showcasing your product, making sure it doesn't break. Some of the enterprise clients that were kind of design partners for us at first, they had to spend millions on salaries of pre-sale engineers and salespeople to just kind of to create mock-up demos, make sure things don't break when they go on a live call. But everything broke for everyone. So there was an immediate need.
Was this relationships you already had, or did you run a cold email campaign to just get in front of people?
So we used, it was kind of not the first run for me and my co-founders. So there was a couple of sales leaders we had in our network that we could interview. I tried to focus on the US market and go up market as much as I could. But the first couple of calls we had were, of course, relying on our own network. And the following calls we had were because there started to be a word out about this new animal called interactive demos, and some sales leaders just kind of agreed to take a call and hear what it's going to be about.
Were those original calls? Did you structure them as discovery, asking questions, or was it you were more sales mode by that point, pretty confident that this was a solid idea and it was just about trying to get people to sign?
So we were super confident about our idea, but we positioned it, of course, what I think every founder should do. First of all, you start by asking about the challenges and the problems and what's missing, in your sales stack. And then you get some solid answers that could lead you to your own idea. But our instinct was that they're gonna benefit from the specific idea we had. But we started the call with just kind of hearing their general kind of set of problems.
You ended up building a wait list of 700 kind of people. What was this all this hand-to-hand combat, 700 interviews, or did you at some point find different tactics to maybe scale that wait list a bit faster?
Let's say we interviewed 60 or 70 sales leaders, and that was one-on-one, meetings that we got from our network and other people. Afterwards, we raised an initial seed round. It was the first batch of our seed round. It was 2.5 million. And at that moment, I felt that I should go to market as fast as I can.
At that point, was it really based on the team? Like you had a track record. Was that mainly why you think you raised that seed round when you did, or was there a thesis that I think it was NFX, right, that led it, that maybe they had at the time?
Yeah, NFX, which of course is an amazing fund for SaaS products. They were the first believers. They were accompanied by angel investors like the CEO of Wix and Liquid 2 in San Francisco and some other investors. The way that we saw it, my initial investors, they were like, the website isn't clear yet, the value prop isn't clear yet, and if you launch it now and go above the radar, then you might burn some bridges. But I saw a lot of different startups in my life, and I felt that this one could spark a whole landscape if we do it fast and we do it loud. That was kind of the strategy, and we put marketing in mind and brand in mind and all that, and positioning in mind since day one. So I took it to places like Product Hunt and LinkedIn and all kinds of platforms where I felt salespeople are gonna be curious to hear what it's about. And it was, according to some publications, the most viral product launch of 2020. As you know, it was a troubling year to be doing anything. So that helped the waitlist grow to 700 people, and that also helped us extend our seed round from 2.5 to, I think it was 6 or 7.
How do you so let me go on that tangent for a second. I mean, I think being like the stealth startup is kind of like cool these days, right? And I think the general advice you would get from VCs is like stay quiet until you're like ready, kind of art of war stuff. Obviously you did the opposite and it works for you. Like, what's your advice to founders on, what should they think about? I'm sure it's case by case. So like, what should they think about, whether they consider going out early, product hunt, blasting it out, PR, all this stuff, or, staying quiet until, they're doing 10 million ARR and then they kind of get noticed?
Yeah, like you said, it's a case by case. Cybersecurity companies, if they spark competition, they can be in trouble. And you have to have like a very specific marketing where you reach out, you do like ABM for specific CISOs, and your tone of voice has to be kind of spooky, right? You're gonna get hacked and everything. That's like a whole other set of going to market. I feel that in sales enablement, B2B sales kind of thing, there was room for a playbook to go kind of wild. Like we've done things that just amazed us with the exposure they had and the response we got from the market. So that was kind of a hunch that I had. And, if we speak about pros and cons, obviously pros, it built out the landscape, which is now pretty popular. And, a lot of people are aware of it. Cons, it generates a lot of companies that are inspired by your idea, and some of them can raise a lot of money. And overall, that also helps you kind of educate the market. So the only tip that I can give founders is they have to decide if they're building something where market education will help them, and they don't mind having 15 or 20, follow-up teams that will be inspired by their idea. That's fine. You can go crazy. If you think you're building in a landscape where even 2 competitors will be problematic for you, then you should definitely be heads down and build for a while.
This is a stupid question, but just for the audience who maybe not kind of all in on sales enablement tech, like when you take something like Envision, which is really just mock-ups for product or whatever, and you compare it to what you built at Walnut, like what are some of the key differences? Is that even like an analogy that even makes sense, or is this totally different worlds?
It's totally different because people use mock-up tools to create something that doesn't exist yet mostly, and kind of illustrate how that would play out. Whereas we work with companies, like Adobe or Dell or Equifax or Medallia, or companies where everything is all set up, to say the least, but they have to turn that into something that will actually be able to tell a story, and in a way that you don't need to borrow any resources from R&D or product or design. So you got to have your platform all set. You can just customize the data and make it amazing, but you cannot make up some feature that doesn't exist as you would with graphic design.
And so let's go back to this wait list. Like you do decide the strategy of kind of going out there and just, making as much noise as possible. What were some of the tactics that worked the best? Any stories you can share from there where even maybe you were surprised as to just how well they really ended up working, and what were they, and kind of how did you structure them?
Yeah, so I would talk about two anecdotes that I think some of the people listening might know. One of them is a video that we released that was kind of a low budget film, and we tried to say, like, we were still a pretty small team, so we wrote the script and we acted in it as to the best of our abilities. But it was me thinking, we are all someone else's prospects. Like, even people that have or run software companies, they are also buying software from other people. And eventually, the prospects are going through terrible processes. So I came up with this hashtag called We Are Prospect, and we filmed a video of a nice lady trying to buy a shirt, and the salesperson is kind of giving her hell. And it's the metaphor was buying software, of course. And we just published it on LinkedIn. In retrospect, like, the message really resonated, and the way we told the story really resonate with the audience. And we woke up to seeing like millions and millions of organic views on LinkedIn. And
even, did you sponsor it, or literally you just put it out on LinkedIn as a video, kind of your profile, and it just took off?
Completely organic.
Wow.
The most significant companies in our space reached out wanting to be part of the movement. Some of them are public companies, people from Fortune 500. Executives from Fortune companies were kind of sharing it on LinkedIn, saying this is insane. And some of our competition was kind of starting to do even lower budget versions of that film. And it just kind of broke LinkedIn for a little while. But this was really early on, and this was really low budget, and it was kind of our way to say, what's the change we want to bring, right? It's not just a product we're building. And then we had a episode 2 of that, and that also had the same outcome. So we chose building a movement as some tactic that I know every founder say they want to build a category, and every founder say they want to build a movement and all kinds of stuff. For us, it played out nice. The second tactic we used,
maybe just on that, by the way, and we'll share the link to that video in the footnotes. But just like from your perspective, what do you think you got so right? Like, for people to actually share a company's video, I mean, you gotta like really resonate with something inside, like, and then you did it again, right? So like, what do you think is the nugget that you really got right there?
I think the emotions that people had at the time were, and especially people on LinkedIn, which are professionals, right? So most of them are salespeople, marketing people, CS people. I think everybody was suffering from the same thing. They just didn't know to put their fingers on it and say, this part of the entire process is a shit show. Prospects are suffering processes. There's an infographic that Gartner published. It looks like a meme. It's so complicated. Like, they take you through what a sales process is in B2B, but it's like a million lines going crazy in circles. And people knew what's pissing them off. They didn't know to describe it. And then we did a video where this lady trying to buy a shirt was like the heart of the suffering of everyone that were exposed to our video, and they just kind of engage with it like crazy.
And was it mainly focused on the problem side, or or how much was the solution kind of even part of that video? As I find, generally speaking, the problem is actually what resonates more. Like, as long as you're like, yeah, that pisses me off, you hit that like, you hit that share. Was that how you structured it?
Yeah, we didn't even talk about Walnut in that video. We had very successful ads, but this one was like completely a problem. We just put a Walnut logo on it, and the call to action was not even try our product. The call to action was sign up for more content.
And so you're moving on to the second tactic?
The second tactic that we did early on and really low budget was we went to LinkedIn with a set of ads that, and I know we're talking about startups still being scrappy and not having a lot of budget. So we published on LinkedIn like a set of ads that show a cat and a lion, and the text says that before Walnut, your product demo is a cat, and after it's a lion. And now you're wondering, what difference does that make? And everybody makes funny ads, but apparently we were like the first ones to use that format. And then today you see the top companies, the top enterprise companies, hundreds and hundreds of them just borrowing the same format. And there was a annual conference, and the CMO of LinkedIn went on live stage about, I think it was last year or 2 years ago. The first thing he showed on the screen, I think it was some pastry like Walnut saying, before it's uncooked and before it's a cooked pastry, and it got to all kinds of festivals on the main screen, and people, I heard from people that are students in some college that a professor was kind of analyzing why Walnut did what they did with that ad. Honestly, I have to say we didn't do a lot. Like, we thought it's going to be cool. We didn't know it's going to get there. So what I'm trying to say is you don't need a lot of budget when you're just going to market at first. You can be pretty good at just kind of sensing what your audience is looking to see, and kind of, are they wanting to buy tools that are like down to earth, that are boring and professional? Are they, how are they going to react to humor and jokes? And to us, it's played out pretty early on.
Perfect. So then maybe moving on, like you're kind of building this wait list, you're creating content, and I assume just spending a lot of time heads down building the product. Like how do you shift from there to actually putting the product in people's hands? Like when did that start happening, and what did that look like?
So we worked with design partners, and we started onboarding companies that were part of the waitlist. We had a couple of hundreds of like I said, of contacts on the waitlist, and we tried choosing companies where we thought it's going to be a fit, and use cases where we thought it's going to be a fit. Because a way to a fast market fit is not going all in with everything that with everything possible. You gotta try and make something valuable for the client. Otherwise, you're the one that's starting off. They have nothing to lose, and you can lose a lot of money and precious time. So
what did you think about, like when you thought about, because I think that's critically important, like product market fit is partially about the product. It's also about the market, and specifically the market you choose to start with. Like what were some of the elements you thought through when you decided, these customers are a fit, but these ones maybe not yet?
So first of all, the persona that reached out and signed up for the waitlist, if we saw it as someone that can make an impact and help us drive success within the organization, that's one thing. The size of the company, of course, we try to go enterprise. And
you wanted bigger. You didn't want mid market or SMB. You'd rather large enterprise to start.
Yeah, which overall, I think that we had a couple where we actually had a mix. We had a couple of startup companies where the founders were making demos all day long. We had Fortune 100 companies. So I think that this problem of showcasing the product is a cross-vertical problem, so and a cross-size problem. So I try to prove it by showing that we can drive value to initial companies in various stages. And it played out completely. Like, it's really not about the size of the company today. It's really a global problem, you might say.
One of the things with enterprises I find is, there's so much upside because like the contract sizes can be so big when you get there. But one of the things that I've seen at least is like this mismatch between speed. Like as a startup, every day matters, every week matters. And as an enterprise, you're like thinking in like quarters maybe, but probably years. Did you find some of that, or did you, for whatever reason at that time, like find there was actually enough pull from these enterprise customers and they were, moving at your speed?
So they were moving fast. We were obviously, you're starting at a price point where it's not too much of a complicated procurement process with enterprise companies, right? You never start with a 200K ACV if you're a startup company. So you always find if you find the right guy within the company, then obviously you can decide together what's kind of a financial agreement that he can move fast with. He can see value, then he can try and expand within the organization and try to go for, everything that could get us traction and not scare off their CFOs. And we grew our prices from there. So I think you have to kind of lose some dollars in the first place in order to get those logos.
And maybe just the other thing, like, I don't know if this came up in conversations, I'm thinking in the back of my head, like oftentimes startups are pitching this kind of time-saving ROI. Whereas with you, I would assume that for a lot of these salespeople who are implementing it, it affected their own KPIs, like close rate and things like that. Is that accurate? Like, is that how they looked at, well, if the demos don't crash, I'll close more deals, and that's why it's so important to me?
It was a little easier to quantify, I would say, because if you don't have to spend millions of dollars on teams that just build out demo environments, if you don't have to spend theoretical millions of dollars on people communicating inside the organization, can you add a feature? Can you remove a feature? We all know what happens when a salesperson in a B2B company goes to anyone at R&D and ask them to illustrate a new feature, right? They're going to kick his ass. So it was really it was really easy, to quantify. At first, I think I wouldn't be as ambitious to say, we doubled everyone's sales, or, everyone met their quotas just because they used Walnut. You cannot attach such a success to any of your tools, not even this most successful one, but we were definitely part of like a set of improvements that they saw within the org.
And so then that's kind of the design partners. I guess you're going back and forth. Did you end up picking, you had, as you said, kind of from startup founders all the way to enterprise, as you started off in this design phase, did you end up deciding to, at least from a go-to-market perspective, hone in on one of those kind of company size types, or did you scale from there to like 1 million plus growing across the board?
The upside of seeing a landscape that you created become crowded and competitive is the market education is on steroids, and the inbound leads that you get are also on steroids. So you get a lot of leads coming in. The more other vendors are helping to educate the market, the more leads you get coming in from the top companies, because they see one of the vendors do something nice, and then they say, "Oh, interactive demos, that sounds cool." They research and they see who was like the pioneer of the market, and then they reach out. So it was really fast. Like everything happened really fast here. Like Gartner recognizing it, people raising Series A's, B's, lots of companies in YC doing it, and enterprise champions have like a demos budget, which it was not a thing before we launched. They were using Loom videos to show product. They were using PowerPoint presentations, and they were using just like IT oriented demo environments. So, but from the moment everything happens so fast, if things are playing out for you, you get a lot of leads from companies and really top logos. And then it's just about the value of the product, right? Nothing's going to help you if the product is not valuable. And lucky for us, the first set of clients and design partners we had were that they saw like, positive ROI from everything.
So was most of your kind of road from 0 to 1 or 2 million ARR really just like inbound led, or did you do kind of an outbound motion as well at that point?
Between 0 and 2, I would say it was mostly inbound for sure.
Got it. And then what about the series? So I believe this, when you raised 15 million, I think it was mid 2021. Is that correct? Okay. And that was a series A or B? A. Okay.
A.
Where were you at that point? And maybe just walk us through how that fundraise even happened. Was that also inbound, or did you kind of run a process? How did you do that?
Right. So we extended our seed round, like I said, from 2 to a 6. That extension happened with some pretty amazing investors, mostly from SF, A Capital, and SV Angel, and a couple of others. A couple of months later, we did raise our Series A. It was pretty preemptive. It was by a VC based out of London called 8 Roads. And then a few months later, we had our Series B done. So like you said, everything happened pretty fast within our funding. For some of the competition, it was the same. It was like going from 0 to Series B in 12 or 18 months. I think there was a lot of excitement around the problem everyone was trying to solve. I think every VC kind of made their bets on initial traction that teams had, and also the technology approach is a bit different from team to team. So there was also like looking at the market and thinking which technology and which product approach can scale the fastest.
Can you describe maybe just what it felt like for things to move that fast, both in terms of just getting all this money into your company within 12 to 18 months, and then the hiring and the servicing that you need to do to kind of react quickly? Like, what was that experience like?
It's a pretty intense experience. I think you need a strong initial leadership and management team as like your first team. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And you don't have to grow to 100 people for things not to work. You can grow to 40 people or 30 people and get it wrong. So the first thing is I made sure that the leadership was super strong. We tried to put our culture in mind, even though it's like distributed across so many time zones. And, there was some, of course, growing pains with going from 0 to whatever that was super fast. you spend a lot of time taking care of situations where people were not mid-management, but then they are mid-management and then they want to manage two people, but maybe, and then things are kind of going back to normal. And, there's a lot of lesson learned here, but I would say it all falls on how strong your initial leadership team that surrounds you.
On that, like one of the problems I see, and especially when actually this is when things are working and you're getting market pull, is CEOs getting caught up kind of putting out fires, right? Because like, especially as you start growing, just things go wrong. And sometimes you do need to react as a CEO, but then you can also get to the point where you're just constantly putting out fires. Any thoughts around that? And especially having been through it a few times, I would think you kind of manage to get your head above it all. Like, how do you do that? How do you manage to kind of being reactive and putting out fires versus, staying on top of it and being able to really just move your company forward?
I don't think, if I think of friends of mine that have 1,000 people on their team or 5,000 or 10,000, I think everybody has fires all the time. It's like, and then also when it's just two co-founders to start with, right? There's always a fire, and then also it goes to your first team helping you out, to your board, to your investors, people, advisors, whatever that is. You shouldn't expect your employees to help you fix the daily fires, because and for good reason, because what they have in mind is kind of their their path, their progression within the company, and if it's good for their career and if it's good for the company. And you as a CEO, you have to be providing the most successful paths to all of your employees, while you are putting out fires that could be anything, something in production, something a huge customer is on a conference now showing a demo and something, and they don't have Wi-Fi and whatever, right? Someone needs to fly over. Like, it never stops, and you just need to have the world's best people on your management team to make sure that you're able to succeed.
Perfect. Well, listen, we'll stop it there and maybe just end on the two questions we always end on. Is the first one, when did you feel like you had true product market fit?
So that's a good question, because when I was in SF a few months ago, I went to Dreamforce, and it was just kind of, I was meeting one of our investors, and it was kind of going for the last 2 hours of the entire week. And I walked in, and then I noticed that I wouldn't say half of the companies, but a huge portion of companies were actually using Walnut to show their demos inside the Dreamforce hall. And some of them also recognized me from that video that we did. So it was a pretty, when you build a B2B SaaS product, you don't really see it in the hands of real life people in the real world, right? It's not a B2C app or something. But that was a moment where I saw people just using it and showing me how they use it, show me if they're using it on a huge screen or a tablet or just a laptop. And that was an amazing moment. I left that conference hall and I felt that we did something that actually gets to people on their day to day.
That's a great story. And yeah, I admit, like, I think as a founder, like seeing the value truly delivered and appreciated by your customers is really what it's all about. And then the last question, taking everything you've learned over the last, I guess, 3.5 or so years running Walnut, if you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice when you were just starting this company, what would that be?
When we started the company, it was like the tech market seemed as difficult as it is now, because the first lockdown of COVID seemed like tech is never going to come back, and everybody was let go. Nobody was raising money. And I remember people telling me when I told them I'm about to like start raising a seed round, they were like, you're crazy. It's the worst time ever. Find a job, stop talking bullshit. But I was sold on the problem that we wanted to solve. And it really rewarded us because, people really appreciate founders that are trying to raise at all costs. And even when times are difficult. And now I think this is a different type of crisis. And I think VCs definitely appreciate, like pre-seed teams or seed teams that are kind of just going all in and saying, tech has taken a hit and multiples have taken a hit, but we believe in the problem we want to solve. So not to let other people's opinions of if it's a good time now to be doing it, if it's a bad time, if you should wait 6 months, or those kind of tips that I sometimes hear founders get from investors. I think there's no right time. You just got to go, you just got to go all in, and it's going to be fine.
I love that, because I think, if you're starting a startup today, you're doing it because you genuinely believe that you have to solve this problem. You're certainly not doing it for the hype. 2 years ago, who knows? Some people were doing it for that reason, and some people were doing it because of the TechCrunch headline that they raised $10 million, right? So, yeah, when the tide goes down, it really washes down a lot of people that are in for the wrong reasons. So to all the founders that are fighting it right now, that's the plus side. Anyways, with that said, Yoav, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Yeah, I think founders learn a lot from what you did, especially on kind of the raising awareness, right? And just using content to propel yourself forward, to make yourself a kind of category leader, and all the good that comes from that. So thank you for sharing all that. If you listen to this episode and the show and you like it, I have a huge favor to ask for you. Well, it's actually a really small favor, but it has huge impact. But whichever app you're listening to this episode on, take it out, go to Product Market Fit Show, and leave a review, please. It's going to help. It's not just going to help me, to be clear. It's going to help other founders discover this show, because the algorithms, whether it's Spotify, whether it's Apple, whether it's any other podcast player, one of the big things they look at is frequency of reviews. It's quantity of reviews. And the reality is, if all of you listening right now left reviews, we would have thousands of reviews. So please take literally a minute, even if you're just writing like, great podcast, or I love this podcast, whatever it is, just write a few words. Obviously, the longer the better, the more detailed the better, but write anything, leave 5 stars, and you will be helping me, but most importantly, many other founders just like you discover the show. Thank you.